So the new Sony XB23 is a great sounding little portable Bluetooth speaker. But if you're looking for a speaker for the summer, then the JBL Flip 5 and UE Wonderboom 2 are two great options as well. Now, all three of these speakers are very different from one another, so depending on your needs, one might be better than the other for you. Now, when it comes to price, all three of these speakers retail for $100, which isn't too bad. So if you want to pick either of these speakers up, they'll be linked down below. Now, first off, let's talk about the designs of these speakers. Now, all three of these speakers have mostly fabric-covered bodies, so all of these speakers should have no problem standing up to constant bumps and scrapes if you plan on constantly taking any of these speakers on the go with you. And all of these speakers are waterproof, so you don't have to worry about getting any of these speakers wet. But the XB23 is the largest speaker here, whereas the Flip 5 is a little smaller, and then there's the Wonderboom 2, which just looks like a ball. Now, like I mentioned in the full review, the XB23 is very large for a small portable Bluetooth speaker. But, I mean, you can still easily take it on the go with you. But personally, I do prefer the Wonderboom 2 here if you're looking for a speaker to take camping or to take to the beach, because it is smaller, but more importantly, it doesn't have those exposed passive radiators to worry about like these other two speakers have. But the biggest drawback about the Wonderboom 2 is that since this speaker is the oldest speaker here, the Wonderboom 2 is still using a micro USB port for charging, whereas both the JBL Flip 5 and XB23 are using a USB-C port, which is what we like to see these days. Now, it's very important to keep in mind that the USB-C ports on both the Flip 5 and XB23 are strictly used for charging. You can't use those USB-C ports as a wired connection, and you can't use those USB-C ports to charge your own devices. Now, when it comes to battery life, unfortunately, the XB23 has the worst performing battery life here. Now, this speaker does have an advertised battery life of 12 hours, but that's when the speaker is playing at 50% volume and while in stamina mode. And personally, I don't like to use stamina mode on this speaker if I don't have to, because stamina mode makes the speaker sound very flat. But the speaker also has an advertised battery life of 10 hours while in extra bass mode. But while in extra bass mode and with this speaker playing at max volume, the speaker's battery life is really only good for around 2.5 to 3 hours, and at 80% volume, the speaker is really only good for around 4.5 to 5 hours. So overall, I feel that the battery life on the XB23 is very so-so. Whereas both the Flip 5 and Wonderboom 2 are good for around 4 hours of playback time when they're both playing at max volume. And they're both good for around 7.5 to maybe 8 hours of playback time when they're both playing at 80% volume. Now, when it comes to Bluetooth connectivity, all three of these speakers can be simultaneously connected to two devices at the same time, so you and a friend can both be DJ. But it's very important to keep in mind that both the Wonderboom 2 and Flip 5 are strictly using SBC, whereas the XB23 has support for higher quality audio codecs like AAC and LDAC. But something else that's also very important to keep in mind is that all three of these speakers don't have an audio jack. Now personally, I don't mind not having an audio jack on these smaller speakers, but I do think that is something to look out for. But if you're somebody that does want or need an audio jack, then you might be interested in the JBL Charge 4. But now let's talk about listening to music with these speakers. Now, all of these speakers have very different setups. The XB23 has dual frontward-firing transducers and dual passive radiators that shoot out the sides. Now, the Flip 5 also has dual passive radiators that shoot out the sides, but it only has a single frontward-firing transducer. And then there's the Wonderboom 2. Now, both the XB23 and Flip 5 are your standard frontward-firing speakers, whereas the Wonderboom 2 is a 360-degree speaker. Now, this speaker has a dual transducer and dual passive radiator setup, but its components shoot out in all directions. But now, we're going to jump into the sound test. All three of these speakers are playing at max volume. The XB23 is in extra bass mode, and the Wonderboom 2 is playing in its default mode as well. And
up and our growlings when people change, but not us. And we just chillin', kicking it, kissed by the sun. Could be soaked to the skin in the moss. I know she got the good vibes when seasons change, but we're the same. Even if I lost all my money, the zero runs deep, honey. And I don't need to speak a single word, 'cause you got me holding, holding. Even if my jokes aren't funny, my tongue tied up on it. And I don't need to speak a single word, 'cause you got me holding, holding. 'Cause you got me holding. Even if my jokes aren't funny, my tongue tied up on it. And I don't need to speak a single word, 'cause you got me holding, holding. 'Cause you got me holding. Even if I lost all my money, the zero runs deep, honey. And I don't need to speak a single word, 'cause you got me holding. Even if my jokes aren't funny, my tongue tied up on it. And I don't need to speak a single word, 'cause you got me holding.
So first off, I want to say that I think the XB23 is the best sounding speaker here because it sounds the most balanced here. The highs and bass aren't fighting each other here for superiority. Whereas the Flip 5 does like to put a little more emphasis on the highs, which is what JBL likes to do on all of their speakers. And the Wonderboom 2 is the warmest sounding speaker here, but personally I don't mind that because the Wonderboom 2 does have the most amount of bass here. Now, when it comes to maximum volume, both the XB23 and Flip 5 get just as loud as one another. But the Wonderboom 2 does get a little louder than both of these other two speakers. Now, like I mentioned earlier, the Wonderboom 2 is a 360-degree speaker, and this speaker is great to use with friends because it can cover a large area with music without having to crank the volume up super loud. But if you want to crank the volume up on the Wonderboom 2, then you can also do that. So personally, for me, I prefer the Wonderboom 2 here because it gets the loudest here, it has a ton of bass, it sounds good, and also since it's a 360-degree speaker, it's great to use with friends. But technically, the XB23 is the better sounding speaker here because it sounds the most balanced. But also, with the XB23, you can go in and adjust the bass, mids, and treble on this speaker to your liking. Whereas with the Flip 5, you're stuck with JBL's stock EQ. But then there's the Wonderboom 2, which has an outdoors mode. Now what outdoors mode does is that it reduces the bass on the speaker and increases the mids and highs on the speaker, so that the speaker sounds louder and so that its sound can travel out farther. Now, outdoors mode is definitely a welcomed feature, but if you want to get the best sound out of this speaker, you're better off using it with outdoors mode turned off. But now let's talk about speaker pairing protocols because all of these speakers have some kind of fragmentation to look out for. Now, the XB23 is using Sony's new Party Connect, meaning that you can only pair the XB23 up to Sony's newer speakers that are also using Party Connect, like an XB43, an XB33, or another XB23. And this also means that you can't pair the XB23 to any of Sony's older speakers using a wireless party chain. And then there's the JBL Flip 5, which is using JBL Party Boost, meaning that you can only pair it up to JBL's newer speakers that are also using Party Boost, like a new JBL Boombox 2, a JBL Flip 5, a JBL Pulse 4, or any other JBL speakers that might be coming down the pipeline, like the JBL Extreme 3. And this also means that you can't pair the JBL Flip 5 to any of JBL's older speakers that are using JBL Connect Plus. And then there's the Wonderboom 2, which is using Party Up, but you can only pair the Wonderboom 2 up to an original Wonderboom or one other Wonderboom 2. And if you want to get stereo sound going, then you can only do that by pairing the Wonderboom 2 up to another Wonderboom 2. And also keep in mind, you can't pair the Wonderboom 2 to any of UE's other speakers, like a Boom or Boom 3 or a Mega Boom or the new Hyperboom. So with all that being said, like I said in the full review, the XB23 is a great sounding speaker. It has a much wider soundstage and much better instrument separation than its predecessor, and it's also the most balanced sounding speaker here. And through Sony's app, you can go in and adjust its EQ to your liking. But I feel that you really gotta watch out for the battery life on the XB23. So if you're looking for a small speaker to take with you camping or to the beach this summer, then the XB23 wouldn't be my first pick. Personally, I still prefer to use the Wonderboom 2 because it has the most amount of bass here, it gets the loudest, its 360-degree sound is great to use with friends, but more importantly, it has a much better performing battery life than the XB23, which is crucial for a portable speaker. The main thing that you gotta look out for on the Wonderboom 2 is that it's still using a micro USB port for charging. But if you're simply just not interested in a 360-degree speaker, or if USB-C charging is a must for you, then the Flip 5 is a good alternative as well. Because remember, the XB23's battery life just isn't the best out there. If you made it this far, I guess you enjoyed the video, so hit that like button and get subscribed. It helps out more than you realize. If you want to pick any of the products up mentioned in this video, those will be linked in the description down below, and you can also support the channel by checking out the merch store. But other than that, I'll catch you next time.